welcoming Alana Freeland right now so that she can share with you the work that she's doing and also discuss the books that she's written. So get your pens ready, take notes. She's amazing. And she's in Washington. So without further ado, Alana, I'd like you to intro yourself, please.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, Deborah. Hello, everyone from afar. I am Ilana Freeland. I have been involved for almost 10 years now researching the geoengineering that's being done to the planet, because the primary story that is told to us is actually a fabrication covering over the fact that the military-industrial intelligence complex is performing a number of experiments on the environment and on us via the jet planes and the rockets that are launched. And then, of course, we all know that Monsanto joined in on this with its aluminum restrictive seed and the Roundup that it sprays. And then now we're becoming aware of the relationship of the vaccinations to, again, chemical experimentation on humanity. And when I discovered all this, in 2014, my first book was published, Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. And then through that book, I was able to sort of peer down under all of that and see yet more having to do with the direction we're being dragged in toward, yes, globalization, yes, UN 2030, whatever they want to call it, but mostly toward, for humanity, toward transhumanism. And so I wrote the second book in 2018. It came out, Under an Ionized Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. And that book has to do with showing how the entire planet has been armed with what you would probably know the space fence as the smart grid. And so now that that's all set up and the atmosphere is properly ionized through having experimented years ago with the huge ionospheric heater in Gakona, Alaska, known in a friendly way as HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, we are now sort of fed by the ionosphere around our planet to make our atmosphere electrified all the time. This is important for the large-scale, the macro-scale operations that are necessary to controlling the entire planet under what the military calls the doctrine of full-spectrum dominance. And when they say full-spectrum dominance, and when it's coming from the military, because of our conditioning in the past, we immediately think, well, that's our military. They're protecting us from our enemies abroad. But this is really not the case anymore. Things have shifted, and they shifted in the 90s under the Revolution of Military Affairs, the RMA. Now, even citizens are seen as prospective enemies, and the military has been very involved in really arming all of its, what it calls its dual-use technology. Now, they have shared dual-use technology with us. We had first the radio. The military had it for years before we consumers had it. Then we had the television. We had the telephone. We've had now the wireless telephone, the computer. All of these things initially were developed by the military. So they all have certain specifications, certain specs that give the military access to our own personal devices and to the power lines that we depend upon, the cell towers that we depend upon, and now they're laying fiber optic everywhere. They have the specs for all that, but we don't have the specs for the military. All right, so that's how all of this came to me, and then I discovered the human element being through the work of the independent scientist Clifford Carnicom, with whom I became very good friends when I was living in Santa Fe, and so was he. So he and his wife. So we did a lot of talking, and I was looking into his microscope. I have a biology undergrad major in biology, and what I was seeing was some sort of entity, very tiny, in my blood. We did blood tests. I saw it crawling around my erythrocytes, my red blood cells, and sucking the iron out of them. This was very illuminating and shocking to me. This was at least 10 years ago. So we have breathed in part of the experiment has to do with certainly all the heavy metals that are all conductive. Those are all smeared over the upper atmosphere, the stratosphere, by military jets and commercial jets. And that's been 20 years of that we've had, with the cover stories constantly being promulgated by the controlled mainstream media. So these things that we've breathed in are very tiny. They're on a nano scale, and really, I knew next to nothing about nanotechnology before I wrote the second book. When I began to read books and articles about nanotechnology and how broadly it's used, I would say that today, if you were to ask me what my main concern is, I would have to say it's not that the weather is engineered. Yes, it's all engineered. There's only in the South Pacific is natural weather arising, which is immediately taken up by the geoengineers and manipulated for various weather events. But I would have to say that my main concern is nanotechnology. No research, as usual, was done on it. No testing before it was loosed into human society. Certainly we had nano-sized elements before this happened.
Now, Alana, let me just pause you for a moment so that those that are listening may not understand the size of nano. So is there a way that you could describe the size of nano?
Yes, a nano particle is 1 billionth of a meter. So you cannot see it. It's just below micron size. And then, of course, below nano are picos, and on it goes. We have entered an era of synthetic biology, which is based on nanotechnology. And really, this experimentation going on us of what we're breathing from what is being delivered through whatever's coming out of the jets and the rockets, and whatever has been genetically put into the GMO foods, and whatever is being piggybacked on the vaccinations given to adults and children. All of this has to do with experimentation in synthetic biology for the future transhumanism. And what transhumanism is, for those who don't know the term very well, it basically is to enhance the human being, to be able to enhance the human being. Not that all human beings will be enhanced, not at all. But they want to find a way At least this is my summation of it. They want to find a way that a human being can be hooked up to a computer, and in the case of the internet, to the internet itself, as our Internet of Things is being hooked up to the internet, and the 5G will definitely be hooked up to the internet. They want to plug us in to this matrix, and I use that word with in mind the trilogy of films that were produced years ago as a way to pre-program us to what was coming. They want to find a way to make sure we're plugged in so that we can be controlled and manipulated remotely. And you may ask yourself, why would they want to do that? I mean, they already control our lives through economics and food production and all sorts of things. Well, this idea of being able to control, to have full spectrum dominance control over planet Earth, to my mind, and the mind, I would think, of investment analyst Catherine Austin Fitts, this is part and parcel of the secret space program that has been going on since John Kennedy was assassinated. So this secret space program wants a human being to be able to go outside of our solar system, or at least to the far reaches of our solar system. And to do that, we first have to leave this planet. And what we have all around this planet is a big bunch of radiation belts known as the Van Allen belts. And what that means is, with our thin skin and our delicate constitution, which has great strengths and weaknesses, they would prefer that they could send something into space that would be connected to a computer, what they call brain-computer interface, that could communicate with any alien life out there, any far-developed alien life, and would be able to certainly get beyond the Van Allen belts and not be sensitive to radiation. So a lot of these things being done today, in my estimation, are really out of the secret space program, which the Nazis started before they ever came to America under Operation Paperclip. They were already pursuing a space program to be able to dominate the solar system. So I know all this sounds like science fiction. Like, what are these guys, crazy? Are they nuts? Are they psycho or sociopaths? Yes, I think they are. But dreaming large, when you have the means, particularly the technology now, by which to control billions of lives and to make sure that you get money from those billions of lives, must be quite sobering for them, and they must also be very happy to finally have one of the greatest dreams of the Illuminati, or whatever you want to call them, the elite, the global elite, the families, the dynastic families that own massive corporations and have for lifetimes. It must be thrilling to live in an era in which Tesla's technology has finally taken hold and has been developed to the degree it has. Now, what I'd like to concentrate on today, that gives you the huge overarching picture of how this is all working. I apologize for my brevity and for the overwhelming nature of what I'm showing you that I am absolutely convinced of now after great research. I'm a very good researcher. So I just want to give you an idea of your health, because this is the way, after people ask me for years after talks, well, Ilana, what can we do to stop this? And I would say, nothing. I don't know how to stop this at all. In fact, I am completely spending all my energy preparing people, trying to do public outreach to prepare people for what is happening around them of which they have very little understanding, because our leaders and our experts, our PhDs, our doctors, all of these people are absolutely silent. The silence is deafening, and I can only assume that they've all been shut up by various threats or career opportunities or whatever. But I cannot depend on them anymore. I'm absolutely amazed that my two little books are the only books out on this huge issue. But of course, I'm sure that I'm not a threat to them, because I don't have a PhD in plasma physics. And even though I do good research, I think that they just keep quiet about these two little books that are out there, and hope people won't see them. And, I understand that. That's what I would do in their case as well. So I want to just talk a little about your health. And I want to start with Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt. Some of you probably have heard of him. Dietrich Klinghardt is a physician, MD, up here in Washington. He practices in Seattle. He also practices in Berlin. He's a German, and he was raised in Germany. And he's become very aware of certain things that are going on. He's spent a lot of time on children, and he certainly knows about the Lyme disease. He's really dug deep, and I respect him in his efforts to really educate his clients and America in general. So he was talking on one video I was kind of looking at today about a process called apheresis. And apheresis is where they take your blood out of one arm and run it through a filter and then put it back in the other arm. It's a way of cleaning the blood. And he said that when there's a certain machine in Germany that he uses, and he said that every American he had sent to Germany to have this process, he was just amazed, because more than Europeans, Americans were just overflowing with nano-sized aluminum and organophosphates in their blood, like Roundup. He said that it was 100 times higher than mercury or lead, and that he was certain that the source was the weather modification technology, i.e. the jets flying above, spewing out not contrails but chemical trails. The Roundup, I mean, this is really shocking. If you're still eating GMOs, you might reconsider. Not that organic is completely safe anymore. No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that the GMOs are probably much less safe than the organic. Roundup is acting as a chelator for minerals. And what a chelator does is it binds certain things to metals. He said that the Roundup is binding trace minerals in organic food to aluminum and preventing them from being absorbed. Thus, we become trace mineral deficient. Roundup is binding with aluminum and transporting it deep into our brains. Detoxing aluminum if we're going to detox for aluminum, we must also detox for Roundup at the same time. Okay, so he sells products and things, but what I want to stress here is you might think that Monsanto, that came up with Roundup and the Terminator seed, as I call it, you might think they didn't know this. No, this was purposely done. This was all in collusion with the entire geoengineering corporations. That would be all of the chemical corporations like Dow, Monsanto, etc. This would be also the weapons industry, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, L3, all of them. they were all in collusion, what Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex, to be able to do the experiments that they're doing on us. So what's been happening now? What's been happening recently is, I don't know if you saw it, someone sent me an article from the LA Times that in Washington, D.C., we have these mysterious black blotches all over the Capitol building, the Jefferson Memorial, etc., making everything look ugly. And that really it's what's known as biofilm. And it's loaded with microorganisms. Now, along with the microorganisms, and it's unsightly, but they're completely, according to the LA Times, completely bewildered as to what it might be. And you'll see this word over and over, mysterious. It's mysterious. All of this is being done in full sight of all of us, but the spin by the media is everything to keeping us asleep to what's really being said. So Dr. Klinghardt really knows that this is all from geoengineering. He says in another interview with Dr. Marina Costina in August 2019, there's the engineering program, which I really shouldn't talk about. There's lots of nanoparticles in the air that we breathe, which has been shown to shrink the volume of the brain, which dumbs us down. It has huge effects on the environment. The oceans are now covered with a layer of nanobeads of plastic spiked with aluminum and titanium. These are meant to be suspended in the sky to shade the strong excessive sunlight, but whatever goes up goes down, so the oceans are blanketed in it. The media are all looking at the plastic bottles and other things that never break down to these nanoparticles. It's man-made stuff, covers the oceans and prevents the oceans from evaporating water. The whole atmosphere is drying up dramatically, creating deserts at unprecedented speeds with the planet. We're watching that unfold too. All of this has to do with the nanoparticles, some of which are plastic, some of which are metal, some of which are pathogens that are being run for experimentation. And Dr. Klinghardt said that they attach the aluminum and barium to the nanoplastic, which is why we're getting tons of estrogen from just breathing nanoplastics in the air. Like the biofilm on the buildings in Washington, D.C. We're breathing in tons of paraben as well, and parabens are the preservatives in your cosmetics and your pharmaceutical products. They're called para-hydroxybenzoates. They're in moisturizers, they're in shaving creams, they're in personal lubricants, toothpaste. I mean, they're in everything. Were they discussed in Congress? No, in 2002, Congress rubber-stamped nanoparticles. Just do whatever you want with them, and that's what we have. Recently, a study came out that London has noticed they have tons of microplastics in their air. And in all these articles, I have to tell you, it's just phenomenal to me. Not once is it ever mentioned that we are breathing these things in, breathing them in. And when they get in us, because of their tiny size, they come into our lungs, they go straight through the lungs into the blood, they go straight from the blood to the brain, and they go straight through the blood-brain barrier. So if we're noticing that our memory is not very good, and we're not able to retain things that we read, that we really can't concentrate when we read, all of these are symptomatic, not of just having aluminum in our brains, that's bad enough, but of being absolutely filled with nanoparticles, all of which reproduce by means of replication. So, to me, we've always had parasites, we've always had flora and fauna living in our intestinal tract that have more or less been our good friends. we've always had the micro world within our bodies and around us. But this is the first time, to my knowledge, that we've ever had a man-made device that has been loosed into the environment, and all of which, now you might think of them as just being sort of wild critters, little tiny wild critters that just kind of go. No, they are mostly controlled by microprocessors. Believe it or not, they may only be 1/billionth of an inch, but each 1/billionth of a meter, but they each have in them a tiny, tiny computer that connects them with what I call the laptop boys, the people who are on laptops in various fusion centers or intelligence agencies or NASA, NOAA, etc., where they can be programmed from a distance, they can be activated, they can be made dormant. They are absolutely controlled remotely. And what they operate as is a swarm consciousness. Now, this might be hard to wrap your heads around. They have a consciousness, not an individual consciousness. They are all, what a nano particle is it is the manufacture of matter by putting one atom at a time next to each other and making them fuse. I know that's impossible for you to imagine, that at the atomic level that they could be making something so tiny as this, but that is exactly what is happening. So atoms and molecules are now building blocks of nanotechnology, and they're super cheap to do. They can pretty much be made to do anything. They can fix things. They can build things from nothing. It all depends on their programming, and that programming is happening remotely. So when I first saw them in action, because I knew a lot of theory, but I hadn't really seen them in action, that was when you had your California fires, when in fact it was the Santa Rosa fire. Someone took some really good drone footage of the Santa Rosa fire, and I was watching it for maybe the second or third time, sort of just seeing how it would be possible for one house to be burned and incinerated and another house standing, and how the trees were still standing. And as I'm sitting there contemplating these things, I suddenly noticed that the embers, what I think are embers of a fire, are sort of crawling along the ground. And they're going in a sort of pattern, sort of a wave-like pattern, as if radio frequency were controlling them. And
So what you're saying, Alana, is that the embers are nanobots. Is that right?
yes, they were a swarm of nanobots heading for yet another place where they were being directed remotely. So I saw how they move as a unit, and I'm sorry to say that that's how they are in our bodies. Now, here comes the 5G. Let's finish up with the 5G. The 5G is a millimeter wave technology. It is a weapon technology. I will spend some time on it in this third and last book I'm writing on this topic. The 5G I call, in the second book, I call it the linchpin of the space fence lockdown. Mm-hmm. And by linchpin, I mean that this will assure that we are absolutely plugged in and available for control on many levels. We've heard a lot about the small antennas. We've heard a lot about how the 5G can't really peer through walls. We've heard a lot of misinformation, a lot. And it just takes a while. I mean, that's what researching when you're dealing with national security issues that you are not being told about and you're being lied to about as a form of cover. This is how you do the research. You gotta let things sit a while so that you can see what other people say, think your thoughts, go to sleep at night, kind of ruminate while you're asleep. And this is how I work, along with a ton of reading, of course. But this 5G will be able to. Its primary job is to be an interface with the Internet of Things, which is all around you. And in the smart city, we'll really see how it works in a lockdown fashion of an electronic concentration camp, much like the Gaza Strip of Israel, that Israel controls. So this idea of controlling the entire planet, again, I want to remind you that my thesis is that this is part of the secret space program, that if they really are intending to colonize Mars and take over the solar system, there's several things that have to be done. One, they have to control this planet. Absolutely. They cannot have this old idea of nations that are all individual. They're going to have one planet that can be controlled from, Party Central, UN, New York, wherever. The second thing they're going to have is control over the sun. And that's being done. You're hearing about the solar minimum, you're hearing about CMEs, and all the things that we hear about regarding natural space weather. Well, I don't see that all of the weather, maybe some of the weather in space is still natural, but certainly they are working very hard on controlling the sun, and they have the solar simulator, which is a fake sun, that they, sort of a mirroring device that they have up now and then. You can see it because it has hexagonal forms in it. So, we're in this big guessing game, right? And yeah, we can't believe everything right away, but eventually we really have to consider that we will believe as much as we have now, and then we'll listen to others. And it's been a fantastic era on the internet, despite the fact that we're all going on watch lists. It's been fantastic to see just regular people from among the masses who are thinking things through, doing their own research, sharing their research, having discussions. It's not always so polite, but often it is. Often it's very respectful, and I actually call the internet the town square, and the only one we have now, because we're all so isolated, we're all so cut off from each other. At least where I live, I am.
Well, that would be true. Now, Alana, let me just ask you a couple of questions, and I think we may have a few questions from the people that are here as well. You had talked about some soaks using saltwater baths and Epsom salt and 20 mule team borax, etc. Would you just dive into a minimal possibility that people might have with what we all have in us?
Right. First thing I would do is get a little piece of your hair and take it for an analysis. And be careful of the lab you choose, because many labs are compromised. I don't know in what form they have been compromised, but they will either lie or not even touch people who are, specimens where people are looking for what's in these specimens. Okay, so find out what your heavy metal content is. however you do that. Maybe go to a naturopath. And then the next thing is I recommend, not that he's the only one, because a lot of people are pursuing experimentation through their own illnesses, like through Morgellons outbreaks and through chronic fatigue syndrome and Lyme disease. I mean, there are a lot of people who really have lost faith with the medical establishment, which truthfully I've never had, and they are pursuing their own investigations and experiments through natural means, low-tech natural means. Okay, so I recommend Tony Pantalaresco. Tony is a Canadian, and he has had Morgellons and has spent 10 years, he's a herbalist for 10 years now, and he is helping many, many people who are coming to him. And Pantalaresco is spelled Pantalleresco. And Tony is, he's got a strange sense of humor, but he's doing great work. And I do his bath, and I do the bath once or twice a week. And that is where I put in the bath Epsom salt, sea salt. I can use baking powder, because anything alkaline actually, and then borax. And it may sound strange that, you're using a laundry detergent helper, but really what borax is it's 95% boron. And the boron, its purpose in all of this is not alkalinity. Its purpose is to get the biofilm off of our skin and open our pores. That's its purpose in the bath.
Now, just a moment, Alana. The word you said is borax was blon. What was that word?
Boron.
Boron. Okay, got it. Yeah, of course.
Boron is in the periodic table.
Right.
So, so when you open the pores, then when you get into the alkaline bath, which is slightly electrolytic, like in a chemistry experiment, because of the combination of these alkaline agents, the bath becomes a little electrified. Nothing that you would feel, but it sort of zaps the body and stimulates the metals, and they're drawn to it, and they start coming out. Now, will you see them? Not really, unless you want to set it up where, I think Tony can tell you more than I can. You turn the lights out, you've got a good flashlight, you've been doing the baths for a few weeks, and now, after you've been in the tub for 10 or 15 minutes, you turn the flashlight on and check the top of the water, you're probably going to see a scum. Now, some of that scum is going to be biofilm, sure, but there's going to be nanos in that scum. So that's one thing. The other thing I recommend, and I did build one, is his ionizing foot bath. And he tells you how to build one where it's cheap for you, instead of getting on the net and ordering one of those $150 ones if money's an issue. But you can get one of those too. And then you're doing the same thing in a way, only with vinegar and distilled water or any number of things. You're building, again, an electrolytic, alkalinizing bath for your feet. And you just put your feet in there, and then you have a 9-volt. I don't know what it's called, a 9-volt I call it, and you plug it in, and it electrifies the water, and they come out in droves because you've got that 9-volt, whereas the bath, you don't have a 9-volt. Now, Tony has gone further than that. He has been exploring magnetic ways of controlling them, and he has built a triangle magnet that you can find at his sites too. He even tells you how to build one of those, because I don't think you can buy one of those. And that, what he does is he has it completely wrapped in plastic, along with a lot of duct tape and magnets, many magnets on it. And then you're basically basically building your own magnetic field. And then you get in the bath, you get in the electrolytic bath, and then you bring the magnet in, and you put it over any area of your body you want. And now you're gonna see action. I mean, you might even see the water move. So I would love to do one of those, but I have not built one of those, so I don't have one of those yet.
Well, we'll see if everyone that you're talking to right now, Alana, is up to maybe creating one for our next meetup. Maybe we'll have some rogue waves happening in our bathtubs. But I really want to thank you thus far. Was there a key point that you hadn't finished yet? And then I'll ask.
No, but I really strongly recommend that people begin to educate themselves about this technology, not to be afraid. Every era has its challenge. This is ours, technology. And we live in a technological era. It is imperative that we begin to study the technology that we have at least become dependent upon, and the technology that is going to more and more take over our lives.
Well, Alana, let me just check to see if anyone has a burning question. I see a couple of hands right now, so you can come up to the mic if you'd like, or I can repeat the question.
Just repeat it.
Okay, I'll repeat the question.
Okay, my question is, has she studied the mitochondria and hemoglobin?
Have you studied hemoglobin and mitochondria effects?
Oh yes, and that I mentioned hemoglobin earlier, and certainly the 5G is going to. Well, it's like I'm going to have to get on a jet plane and come to California soon and avoid going through the millimeter wave device that will shred my mitochondria. As Dr. Jack Kemp is the one that he's my go-to man on the internet for understanding mitochondria. Jack is a neurosurgeon. So more than that, I thought you were going to ask me about something else. What was it?
Well, let's ask if there is a something else. So I see another question. Yes.
So it seems like they're killing us every which way.
Seems like they're killing us every which way, Alana.
And is their goal?
Is their goal?
Well, no, I don't think their goal is to kill us at all. I think that we are, the way the elite, I studied them for 10 years when I studied MK Ultra. I think the elite see us as theirs. We are their people. And we are to be used for their very high purposes. Our individuality is not important to them. The fact that we even are individuals, it's kind of like how people used to think women were not really fully human. It's that way with the elite, and so they're using us, since there's so many of us. They're using us to experiment on ways in which the planet can be absolutely controlled, and everyone and everything on it. That's how I look at it.
Do we have it? I see a couple other questions. Yes.
Is she familiar with Laura Eisenhower?
Are you familiar with Laura Eisenhower?
Yes, I am. I was at a conference she was at. I don't have anything to say about Laura Eisenhower.
Okay. Next question. Yes.
Can you talk about the floaters in the eye?
Oh, yeah. I had mentioned the floaters that we have in our eyes. Can you respond to that in any way, Alana?
No, I've had, now and then I have floaters, and it seems to me that they went way back, like I had them years ago. I don't know if those are, if you take your finger and the second day after you've dusted, I don't dust very often, but if you take your finger and run it along an edge, and then get out your 60-power microscope, like the one you passed around, and turn on the LED light and take a look, you're going to see there are trillions of fibers that we're breathing in, trillions. And inside those fibers are things we don't even know what they are. So that's how it is now.
So maybe the floaters have floated up into our brains then, which is where
Or
they're
come
ending
into
up.
the eye. Yeah, I mean, the smart dust, there's plenty of smart dust. There's just, the tiny world is here in droves now. We've always had it, but now it's even tinier and controlled remotely. This is the strange thing about it.
So I think we have another couple questions. Michelle, yes.
Have you seen, or do you know other people that you speak to who have seen laser marks?
Have you
Widespread laser marks
have you seen other people that have had widespread laser marks
as part of the transhumanism?
as part of the
bodies?
we're talking about, those that are heavily targeted that get laser marks.
Targeting, that's a whole other subject that I'm very involved in. But yes, I have seen people who have been badly microwaved. I have seen, I don't know if I've seen laser marks.
The actual laser marks, have you,
Actually linear,
they're linear
linear laser marks.
linear laser marks.
They're not just.
No, I haven't.
She's not aware of that. Maybe I can get you some pictures up. You can take a peek at that. So
Well, I
does,
know that people who claim to have been abducted had laser marks. I've seen pictures of them,
okay.
but I've never seen one in the flesh, so to speak.
Do we have any other questions? Dr. Ed?
Yeah, I just want to say something about floaters. They've been
About
around
floaters.
for years.
This is Dr. Ed.
Deterioration of the vitreous. So they've
Deterioration
been
of
there
the vitreous.
nanotechnology, but who knows now. And the other thing I wanted to ask Elena about is
Another thing he wants to ask you about.
information that we're already on Mars.
Oh.
Anti-gravity.
Yeah. Dr. Ed is saying that he's read information that we're already on Mars with the anti-gravity craft.
I can't really comment on that because I'd have to do the research to determine if I'm being lied to or not. I mean,
We pretty much are, right?
I mean, that's the exciting thing. I'm
That's
an
exciting.
intellectual,
Yeah,
and,
that's true.
And there are so many possibilities, and I don't tend to get attached to one or another. I just, if I'm wrong, I'll change it. But I just keep going through this, and it's all making a tremendous pattern.
Yes, I agree. So we have one more question here. Yes, Angela?
There's not an acceptable number of these things once we detox from them, right?
Okay, so she's saying there's not, once we detox from these, is there an acceptable reduced number of these in our bodies?
A way to manage
Well, for a while.
A way to manage that for a while, ongoing?
Yeah, because you're going to be breathing the next day, I assume, and you're going to be breathing in. It isn't just the nanoparticles, it's also sensors. I didn't mention that. It's
The
very
sensors.
important. You're breathing in nanosensors that they're using for big data. I mean, they are very interested in your life and your biology and your brain. Just take my word for it. And they're sucking up data through AI systems on each of us. We're breathing all this in every day. So it really is, the detox has to become part of your lifestyle.
So about
Like
2
once
times a
every week
week?
or two.
Yeah, okay. So Alana, we're going to wrap this up here in a moment. Is there anything critical? We've got quite a few people out here. This is not your normal dinner conversation, as I like to call it. And would there be something you'd like to conclude with, Alana?
No, I gave my appeal for knowledge. Knowledge is power. You may not believe it, but, we've got to understand the enemy. I used to be a fan of George Patton, and he would always read up, Caesar's Gallic Wars before facing Rommel in North Africa. I mean, I'm a soldier. I assume some of you, if not all of you, are as well. And I educate myself constantly so that I understand the enemy and which way the enemy is moving so that I can help people.
Well, Alana, I want to thank you for having this discussion with all of us. Everybody's in agreement. And I will stay in touch with you, and we'll discuss more in the future
Okay,
as we move
all right,
on.
everyone. Good work for you all coming together as a community. Work hard.
Thank you so much, Ilana. I'll talk to you soon. Well.